Joining me now is Matthew Whitaker. He's the executive director of the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust, FACT, and I wanted to get him on to talk about the State Department and the Hillary emails and all that stuff. He joined us from an airport somewhere in where are you, Matt?
I'm in the Minneapolis airport right now.
Well, good morning to you, and thank you for joining us. So give us, we're following along on the Hillary emails, but honestly, it has so many moving parts so often, and the media, we all get caught up in the story du jour, and some days it's Donald Trump, and some days it's a local story here, and whatever. And quite honestly, I don't think we get a lot of coverage other than Fox and maybe talk radio on what the latest is on Hillary and her email. So give us a status update first.
Yeah, well, there's been a couple interesting things happen. First of all, Loretta Lynch, I think yesterday, who's the Attorney General of the United States, came out and talked about a little bit about the team that's working on it and described them as, independent, nonpartisan, professional prosecutors and FBI agents. And so, I think they are taking this very serious and trying to give it at least a veneer of not appearing to be having partisan politics play into the prosecution decision. The more important thing that we've learned this week is that some of these emails that have been classified appear to contain information almost verbatim from the top secret and other systems that somebody essentially took off those systems and transcribed into a marked or classified document and then emailed. And so I think that's going to be a very interesting angle to this. I don't believe that Secretary Clinton was the one that was actually transcribing the information off the secured system. But at the same time, those were sent and received on her private email server that resided at her home. And I think that's another interesting development from this week. The number of emails that are classified are over 1,700 now. We have 22 top secret, and then several that contain some of the highest classified information that our country classifies. And so
22 top secret?
Yes, I believe that's the current count on the number of top secret emails.
And let me ask you a question that might sound familiar. At this point, what difference does it make?
Well, it actually makes a huge difference. If you think about the people that have been prosecuted for simply taking classified documents home with them from work with no intent to share them with anybody, not to give them to spies or otherwise. I think justice demands that someone be held accountable for this pattern of behavior, and ultimately the decision to have a unsecured system running all of our nation's top diplomatic information, including...
Wait a second. It was in a bathroom.
It was guarded by the Secret Service. I remember hearing that.
Yeah.
But, the other thing that I think is very interesting is the pivot that Secretary Clinton has done on the whole idea that these documents are classified. She has, to some extent, continued to state that she did not send or receive classified information. There's some belief that she's kind of said that now she didn't send or receive marked classified information. Every time she seems to stake out ground in this situation, it comes out to be untrue. But at the same time, I trust the FBI will do a thorough investigation. I actually believe we're in the final days of a prosecution decision being made. I can't imagine that this goes beyond the middle of March. And so ultimately, if it moves forward, I think it's going to be a very interesting time in our nation's history.
So that's the million-dollar question: is if it moves forward. What's your gut feeling?
Well, I'm a former U.S. attorney, and so I had made those prosecution decisions at a local level that the Attorney General ultimately is going to have to make in this case. And the way that presents itself is the FBI, working in concert with the Department of Justice prosecutors, will sit down, look at all the evidence, and compare the facts and the law. And then if they have reason to believe that a crime's been committed, I would expect will present it to a grand jury, and then that grand jury, which is just private citizens, will decide whether to charge through an indictment. All the publicly available information, and again, they have more information than I have, certainly suggests that folks have committed crimes, and it's a matter of who did what and when. At this point, for example, the transcribing of information off the classified system and then sending that via unsecured means, it seems to me that's a clear violation of federal criminal laws. And again, people have been prosecuted for substantially similar crimes. So, I don't know if ultimately they're going to charge former Secretary Clinton with crimes, but I think there will be individuals in this situation that ultimately will be held accountable.
Okay, so that was a great way to dance around that. So you think somebody gets charged, but I want to know, does she get charged? And you're kind of you're dancing around the edges on that one. Yeah,
well, it's because fundamentally, charging somebody with a crime is a significant event in their lives and ruins reputations. And I think this Department of Justice would not want to interrupt a otherwise orderly nominating process on the Democrat side. So, they're going to claim that it's nonpartisan and that they're not influenced ultimately by what's going on in the election. But at the same time, they will be, and I cannot imagine, especially after all the favorable things that the president has said about Secretary Clinton, that ultimately his Department of Justice pulled the trigger and charges her. So, I'm actually fairly pessimistic that Secretary Clinton gets charged with crimes. I don't doubt there have been crimes committed in relationship to the this private email server and what's been stored on it.
So you think somebody gets charged, you don't think she gets charged. Now my question, and I think I know the answer already from the way you've been talking, you don't think she does get charged, but you think she should be, don't you?
I do, and it's fairly simple, and it's the idea that, as Secretary of State, she signed agreements and knew that she was creating classified information just by her very typing words, and so those documents were classified from the beginning, or classified at birth is the difficult term. And so, the creation and storing of classified information, essentially at home, I think was very dangerous, and I think is illegal and should be prosecuted. I just don't think anybody has the gumption or temerity to pursue that case in this Department of Justice.
Robert Woodward has said this is bigger than Watergate. I think he said something to the effect of 10 times. I forget the measurement amount he gave, but I believe he said it might have been even higher than that. But I think he said it's 10 times worse or bigger than Watergate, and yet I think she escapes unharmed, which is remarkable. The Clintons have, and when you hear the words, there's a poll. Excuse me. There's a poll. And they actually went to a Bernie Sanders rally, too. And so there was a poll where they asked people to describe the words that came to mind when you talked about Hillary, and it's untrustworthy, all kinds of stuff like that. They go to a Democrat rally. It's a fellow competitor, Bernie Sanders, and the people in that, they can't stand her. They can't stand the establishment Democrat. People know she's, for lack of a better word, dirty. They know she's not honest, and the money thing, the Clinton Foundation, all of that, and yet to me she's much worse than Nixon, and yet Nixon was this horrible person, and she's gonna walk away probably unscathed.
Yeah, and ultimately, the American people are going to have to make a decision for themselves, and who occupies the White House in January of 2017 could impact her fate, because long story short is if the Republicans take over the Department of Justice, there could be a chance that a new Attorney General could look at this same evidence and come with a different conclusion. So, I mean, this election could be more than just about who becomes president. It could be ultimately whether or not Secretary Clinton is ultimately prosecuted. And I will say this: we will know because I think the FBI does a really good job of ultimately putting the information out into the world. We'll know what the evidence is that they have and what the potential case that could have been made. It will be an interesting month here as we not only head into some pretty intense primaries on both sides in many states, but we also are probably going to. This case is probably going to come to a head, and there will be whether she's indicted, which I think you read me correctly. I ultimately believe at this time is not going to happen. But there is also the court of public opinion, and depending on what evidence and information is leaked out by various sources within the Department of Justice and within the FBI, I think we're gonna have a pretty clear picture of what the case that could be brought, and ultimately that could affect a new administration if ultimately it's not her at the helm.
Somebody misheard you, sir. This guy's upset. When has the U.S. government been worried about ruining people's lives? They've been killing people, meaning out in Oregon or whatever. Look, people, if you're going to end, don't send me emails like this. That isn't what the guy said. I mean, they have to balance that. They try to be, whatever. This gentleman is analyzing things the way he sees them going down. It doesn't mean he agrees with they need to be worried about somebody's lives.
I'm saying they do it.
But you don't agree. You don't necessarily agree with. You don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, this guy's acting like you're some horrible person because you think they're worried about people's lives and ruining people's lives. That's the fact. You're stating a fact. They are, especially when it's Hillary's life and trying not to upset an election, an electoral process. I know the FBI, to sit there and pretend that's not happening is foolish. You're only analyzing it as the point to this Robert here who just sent this. Don't shoot the messenger is my point.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily agreeing with them. You're just stating a fact that they're trying to do this balancing act as they go forward in prosecuting her.
Right. And I mean, I guess in the bigger picture, and a finer point I'd like to make on that end is, I don't think they should take into account those types of things. I mean, they should look at the facts that they have, the evidence that they can present at trial, and ultimately what the law is. And if there's a case to bring it outside of whether there's an election going on, outside of whether they're ultimately affecting somebody's reputation or life. And so, that's. But unfortunately, I think that they do bring those external factors to bear. And it's going to weigh heavily on them, I believe. Right.
So you're just analyzing. Again, he doesn't agree, folks. He's just telling you the way it is, and the way it should be and the way it is are two different things. Because they sure didn't worry about ruining Nixon's life or putting the country into a tailspin, by bringing all the charges in Watergate against him. Nor should they be worried about Hillary. But the fact is, they are, because that's the way it is. And you can either be mad at Matthew here for saying it, or have your eyes open and realize they are doing this balancing act. They probably wouldn't do it for somebody else, probably wouldn't do it for perhaps a Republican, but they're doing it for her, right or wrong. Again, I'm talking to Matthew Whitaker, Executive Director of the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust. The acronym is FACT, and giving us talking about the status on the Hillary email. So you think sometime in mid-March, the FBI is going to make a pronouncement that they're going after somebody?
Yeah, ultimately, I don't think the FBI won't make any announcements. They'll refer the case to prosecution to the Department of Justice, who has had lawyers working on it. And I think we will see something happen, a kind of a go or no-go. We'll get a sense of whether the case is going to proceed or not. But ultimately, I do think somebody or somebodies are going to get charged in connection with this. It's probably going to be those people that surround her and that ultimately did, for example, the transcription of. Right.
They'll say she didn't. Yeah. They'll say she didn't know. She's not the one who edited them. Someone else sent them to her. How is she supposed to know?
Yeah, and we have obviously mens rea, intent is in mental state, and whether somebody had knowledge are factors that come into criminal laws. So ultimately, those are going to be considered as to what she knew or what she did, and whether she intended to do. All those kind of things are going to come into it. And again, with the Obama as president, who has said very nice things and come very close to endorsing her, I think that's a real concern, and why my group has called for a special counsel that has broad powers and discretion and independence from this administration and this attorney general, so that Obama and Loretta Lynch, who are clearly partisan Democrats, don't ultimately pursue this case just for mere partisan.
Did you watch the Loretta Lynch statements?
I read about them in the paper.
I don't believe for 1 minute I don't believe for 1 minute they're going to be quote unquote neutral. To me, they didn't worry during Watergate. The truth should take you where the truth takes. Damn anybody's consequences, right?
Yeah, no. Ultimately, we are a nation of laws, not men. We all grow up believing that, and we all believe that folks should be held accountable for their actions. And if they violate the law, it shouldn't matter who they are or how powerful they are. Ultimately, if they violate the law, you should be held accountable.
Yep. Again, I'm talking to Matthew Whitaker, Executive Director of the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust. FACT is the acronym. I'm up at factdc.org. That is indeed your national website, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Factdc.org is a way to find out. You can donate to them, too, because they're out there trying to do this work and hold public officials accountable and stay on top. Because we know this stuff is going on. Who's on our side? Who's on our side when the government and the Justice Department that's supposed to be for us is partisan? Because everything's become so partisan. So who's on our side advocating for us in some of the legal proceedings? And you touched on something that's really important here. This next election is going to determine, I believe, the next Supreme Court justice. I hope the Republicans don't act on any nomination Obama puts forward. And so that's going to be in the balance. But also, you said it earlier, whoever the next president is may decide to reopen this or, and almost, you almost wish they'd almost hold off on anything and let the next president do what they want to do with Hillary. And they could reopen it, right? Am I understanding you correct?
Yeah. There would be no double jeopardy. All you'd have to worry about would be a statute of limitations. And I don't know how long the statute of limitations would last on these potential crimes that were committed sometime around 2009, 2013. Typically, the shortest ones are about 5 years, and so I would expect there would still be a window of time for a new administration to look at these facts and the law and determine whether or not laws have been violated.
Well, there'd really be no double jeopardy if she doesn't get if they charge other people and not her, and then they decide to charge her later. That's definitely no double jeopardy, right?
Correct. Exactly.
So there's a lot hanging in the balance with the ask you to pick a candidate, but Trump said he would go after her if he was president. That's one thing he said. I don't know what the others have said. Maybe the others have said similar things. I guess we can only hope. All right. Well, I appreciate it, sir. Anything else you wanted to add or anything else that we should know before you head out here in the next minute or so?
Nope. I just love your listeners to check us out on factdc.org and Facebook and Twitter, FactDC. We're doing something on a regular basis, and we're out there, like you said, kind of stepping in where our elected and appointed officials won't take action.
I love this. There's something here, the critical, that I'd love to talk to you about in the near future. There's two articles up here. Alan Grayson, the nut job from Florida. You guys are doing a piece up there on him, but also FACT, meaning this organization here. Now, again, the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust is calling on the Defense Department to investigate U.S. Senate candidate Joe Sestak. And there's reasons for that we'll get into because he is actually violating some laws with his campaign literature. So thank you for holding his feet to the fire. I'll try to touch base with you on that and keep in touch with you on other issues as time goes on.
All right. Look forward to it. Thanks for the time.
You're welcome. Again, Matthew Whitaker, Executive Director of the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust, FACT. You can go to factdc.org. News Radio 790 WAEB. Keep those calls coming for the Bowl-a-thon.